ReQlogic EX, as we call it, I know there's been some confusion and how we're branding it. DXC Procurement Team is the people, and our products are, ReQlogic, which is the on-premise, and ReQlogic EX, which is for the cloud version. So that might help when you present it to, your customers who have heard the name, ReQlogic EX, cloud version, ReQlogic on-premise version. So what you're seeing here on the home screen is ReQlogic EX. So it looks very similar, a little different, on how it connects and how it interfaces. On the standalone version, real-time interface. We could talk table to table, and there was no delay. The biggest difference for the cloud version is we don't have access to the SQL database like we did in the past. So everything how we talk to Dynamics 365 is through web services. I don't know if you guys did any standalone version of Dynamics Nav. We only really utilize two web services, the PO and the PO invoice, and everything else we could do table to table on there. Where this version, everything is in web services. If you look at the integration mapping, then this is, all the web services. I'm not going to go into detail because this is where we help set it up, and we have documentation on setting it up. But what I wanted to point out here is on your things that are common, where to get to as real time as possible, I set these things to 1 minute intervals. So creating the PO, doing the invoice, doing the receipt, vendor invoice, credit memos, all of those things I set to run in 1 minute intervals, which gives you as close to real time as you could get without table to table. Then other things I set up to 24 hours, and you could set these intervals to be less time. But, things like once you get up running, new vendors get created or currencies get updated. Usually 24-hour intervals are enough time. But if you need to run those more often, you just edit the statuses in here on when these services are going to be run. So that would be the key big difference for sure between ReQlogic and ReQlogic EX, is the communication between the ERP systems. So let me just go back to there. Now, some of the, maybe the nice things from a sales standpoint to point out, and some of it might be a little technical, but I think everyone is familiar with data field customizations on there. What we've added into our data field customizations that make it even more user-friendly than what we had before is the display gives, everyone uses tablets, handheld devices, and desktops and stuff. So, by default, these are the number of rows that would display. So it automatically, will auto size now based on what kind of device you are. And you can control how many rows, but we found, 4, 6, and 12. So if I have, I'm still old school with my iPhone. I don't like, as I call it, the phablet, the ones that are between the tablet and that. Gets too big for a phone. So 12 rows fit great. But, you can make modifications to that on there. If I go into edit mode on one of these, let's just pick one. A lot of things that we've added on there you could set decimal places on, user-defined fields that you might want to set to a number. Alignment, now you could decide whether you want it left, center, or justified. And then on a user-defined field or any field, this tooltip, so in ReQlogic, when you hover over certain fields, a little pop-up box would explain what that field is. We've added that ability where you could add unique customer tips on, hey, what are they using this field? What do you want people to enter it in? So you could put tool tips on any field that you want, including your user-defined fields. So it really comes into play when you add a user-defined field and you want to say, hey, please always enter X, or, what helps you describe to the customer what that user-defined field is for. So it helps them in, data entry and things like that. So, you still have all the same functionalities you used to have in our standalone version, but we've given you even more options in data field customizations. And then on anything that you marked as required, before it was, always on the save event. But now you have the ability to do this on the save, on the submit, or on last approval. Because what we were finding on is, hey, it's a required field, but for requesters, sometimes they don't need to have it filled out, but before it goes into the ERP system, someone along the way, it becomes a required field. So you can determine which fields are required and when they are required. So that should really help the implementation side of things on how people set up the required fields and when is it required to be entered on that. So that's the key differences on the data field customizations. The rest, you still have same functions, view definitions, text administration, and things like that on there. So you'll see different things on the services where on the on-premise version, everything had to be done on the IS server, setting up, review action.email, electronic invoice processing, and all of that. Now, all of that is now done in the front end. So as a ReQlogic user, when you're in ReQlogic EX, you don't really need to have any access to the server at all when you're doing anything. So if I'm setting up my email profiles, I do it in the front end. This used to be a service and stuff that you had to set up on the server. We've tried to take all those type of things that you had to do on the server. Now we moved it over into the front end in the application. So the ReQlogic end user has full ability to control everything now. Any questions on any of that? Okay, so some of the other things for that is our help menu. Like hitting F1 in Dynamics brings you right to that help page. Well, you don't have to hit F1 or anything. Whatever page you're on, if you click on the help, it will bring you to the document on there. So it's an interactive and smart help, as I call it, where you don't need to just open a help and then find where you want to get help on. If you're on the page and you want help on that page, you're able to just click on our icon and it brings you directly to the topic regarding that page. You still can search and do anything else. You can print off documents. You can print all of that. So you still have all of those abilities, but at least it starts out in the page that you're doing. Now, with that being said, say you added user-defined fields, or you have specific processes that you want your, the organization wants their employees to follow. Well, under administration, under the help setup, we have given you the ability to easily customize the help and add whatever you want. So, say you wanted to add things in the requisition entry page on the header information because you've added user-defined fields. You could copy and paste, type, modify, do whatever you want to this document and customize it for your organization. So this was a big request we had, or I had multiple times in implementations. How can I modify help to add what we had? And you could, but it was a convoluted process where you had to go and modify it, rename things, put it into the server and all of this kind of stuff. It just was a complicated process. It wasn't easy to do. Now we've made it very easy. Part of, again, right through the app that the users can do, whoever you have security to on that. So that would be, again, one of the big changes and differences with ReQlogic EX, a better help, interactive help there. Data sharing, multiple databases, especially, people coming from the Great Plains world, if they go into Nav and you have multiple companies and they still want multiple companies. Well, now we have an easy way. Say they added a new company and they wanted to have the setup between the same. And so when you create a user in one, it automatically adds it to the next company. This is where you can determine which master records are going to be synced up between companies. So before, it's always importing things in and having to do it manually. Or if I set up a user in one company, okay, I have to go do it in all the other companies. Now you pick and choose which areas do you want to have synced where you add it in one, it will always be in the other on there. And that's just done from the data sharing setup, all your master records, items, roles, users, routing policies, anything that you want synced up, then you just check the boxes and I'm not going to actually do it because I know I have things differently in here, but you just determine which ones that you want synced up. Now, if you wanted in all the companies, that's for the global. I mean, I only have one company here, but if I had the Mexico one and the Canadian one set up and I wanted it across all, I don't need to check all three companies. I just click global and it will automatically do it. Where if you had, say, more than two companies and say I want the US and the Canadian company the same, but the Mexican company different, then you just check which companies you want synced. So it becomes very flexible on how many companies and which companies do you want synced up. Some might be standalone and some you might want synced and some won't. So, I think this will really come into play with your Great Plains customers if they transfer into D365 and they're used to having, like say that 10 companies, 10 different databases. Well, it's going to be all in one database, but they are going to be separate companies in that database and they'll be treated differently. And then they could sync it up really easily that way through the data sharing on there. The other part that I really like on here is, you're doing testing and you're in your test company and you want to be able to transfer your records easily to your production companies, or even, you might be in one production company and you want to move things over to the other production company or whatever. Before it was always import export tables through ReQlogic utilities. Now, again, we have that built into the interface where, hey, I pick a company and again, I only have one company in this database, so it doesn't really make any sense, but you pick a company and destination company and you pick what you want to transfer. So before you sync up the companies and you're doing testing, you could transfer from your test company to your production company and then decide, do you want to keep them in sync or not? And that's, the play with the company data transfer versus the data sharing. So, those two features really nice. I really like them, and I wish they'd come into the standalone version. I know Heather, our developer, says we'll see what we could bring over, but they added some nice new features in ReQlogic EX that will definitely help the end user and the customers be able to stay only in the application and not have to worry about playing around on servers and doing different type of things. The data maintenance. Now, there still might be reasons to import records, and we still do that. Well, what you have do, and you can drag and drop and hit import. So again, this is taking place, everything that used to do in ReQlogic utilities, and for sure people like your consultants who are doing implementations will attest to this, that utilities did a lot of stuff. Everything that was in the utilities is now in the front end. So on the data maintenance is where you could do your importing. And then the nice thing is you have access to every single table. So if you want to do other things or you want to create your import templates, you pick your data table, you export it out, you populate it, and then you drag and drop it and import it back in with the new information. So again, very user friendly, very easy to export, import multiple data records. So for example, brand new implementation and you want to do your user departments and everything that you used to do in ReQlogic utilities to populate the tables, you're going to use the data maintenance function to do that. The integration mapping we talked about, that's for D365. This API setup here. So we've developed ReQlogic EX. We've built in the integration to Dynamics 365, but I'll just pull a rabbit out of the hat for it now and just say, hey, say NetSuite, for example, or any other product that uses APIs. We have built the tools where you could create APIs to integrate to any other software that has API functionality. The difference is you need to build those APIs from scratch, where in our integration mapping, we've predefined the APIs and stuff. And here, it's going to be more work, and you'd have to build them, but we give you the ability to do that. So again, more flexibility with ReQlogic EX. If your TM group wants to look at other ways to use ReQlogic with other softwares. As long as they have APIs, you can build API integrations to anything that you want. So those are the key differences from the administration standpoint here on that. Configuration, key differences, all the services that used to be done to the server are done there. On that, configuration settings, like menu administration, it used to be is now configuration, how you want them ordered on the pages and stuff. So you could do edits and do different things on here, where just think of this as like the web.config file in the standalone version. Now the configuration settings are all done again in the front end, just like the email services. You could do everything that you used to do in the web.config file on the server, now done through here. So again, front end access to your users instead of going to the server. Now, the brand new thing too, OAuth providers. So this is, and I've set one up here because what I've done, instead of using IMAP integration for my services, which again, you had to do. I know this is a little more technical, but people who are familiar with like either two-factor authentication and stuff like this, OAuth is what we have built in here, where you could do that when you're setting up your configurations and things like that. So instead of using the IMAP integrations and stuff, you can now use the OAuth one. I won't go into more detail because I said it's technical, but at least it gives, again, more options for people who want more secure integrations with these services. Any questions on any of the areas that I've covered so far?
No.
Okay, so master data, same things. You're set up for users, routing policies, roles, budget maintenance. All of that's the same. I mean, look and feel might be a little different just on how the page looks, but very, very similar. All the same things that you had on there is done. We did bring it up, and I'm not sure what the reason is why we called it cards and some around to set up on that, but maybe more similar to what people are used to saying. But item maintenance used to be under just the setup menu on the standalone. But again, everything that you used to set up are done through there. Now, people who are familiar with the routing policies and the rerouting, everything used to be on the general settings. We have an entirely separate page for the reroute triggers, and you could build rerouting and determine it by module. So before, in our standalone version or ReQlogic EX lets you have different reroute triggers depending on doc type. So you might want to say, hey, I'm not doing a requisition on header total, I want it at line total, but on invoices, I wanted a header total on line total, or expenses, something different. We have given you the ability to break out your reroutes by module instead of all or none for all your document types. So that would be the big change on the routing and how that people reroute it on there. I just want to look at general settings for a sec. So yeah, the big difference here on the general settings is depending on what you want to activate at any given time, it's all activated through module selection. It will automatically check things based on your license keys, but say you're phasing things in and you might be licensed for it, but you don't want to have it available yet. You can just uncheck which modules you want to have active right at this point in time. So again, everything done from the front end. It is based on reg keys, whether you even have access to it, but you can turn things on or off very easily if you don't want to use it at that point in time. Everything else is really basically the same. on here, except the numbering system, where you used to only be able to have one set of doc numbers for every document that ReQlogic had. Now you can come up with unique numbering systems by document type on here. So we've given you the extra ability to do those type of things as well. So that's a change in ReQlogic EX versus ReQlogic. From a module standpoint, things are still broken down by module, just like it was in ReQlogic on there. Speaking of that, so one of the differences now, where you can control when you people do upgrades and stuff like that on the on-premise. Well, think of anything else hosted by Microsoft, in their environment. When they want to push out an upgrade, it gets pushed out and there is no control. And ReQlogic EX will be the same way, when you have the cloud version set up and running in there. Every 6 months is what our goal is when we're going to be pushing out service packs and fixes or any bug fixes that have come along on that. And the customer does not control when these upgrades happen anymore. It will just be pushed out, just like when Dynamics 365 will push out an update. When Microsoft pushes out, it just gets pushed out to the hosted servers. So that will be a key thing, and it's not unique to ReQlogic EX. That's just the way Azure, the hosted environment, when you don't have control over the databases and stuff on what happens. That's the same thing with ReQlogic EX. And typically, most customers, it's not a big deal because they don't have to worry about upgrades or when it happens or having to do things on their servers and stuff. And I think that's probably one of the things why people go to a fully hosted environment, is that it just goes over and upgrades will happen automatically on there. Well, now that the requisition entry opened, what I was talking about earlier was search and duplicate. Now we've added the copy buttons directly from the document. So if I wanted to copy a previous document, I could copy a document. Now, if you wanted to grab lines from multiple documents, then that would be done through our search and duplicate functionality on there. And this would give you the ability then, to find which documents. Let me just pick a vendor, because I'm trying to figure out who I might have used a lot. So search and duplicate will still work like the other search and duplicate on there, where if you want individual lines from multiple documents, you could go to search and duplicate. But people who just want to copy individual documents, they don't have to go to search and document. They could stay in the requisition entry or invoice entry screen or expense entry screen and go look up what they've done previously on there, and then just call up that document, and then you have the copy button on there. You do have all the same things. So, we've moved things around a little bit to make it more user-friendly on what, your data entry screens first instead of the statuses, and everything is on there. You still have the summary details, routing, and status tabs and stuff. So, one of the other things that you're going to see that main changes, we try to put all the icons on one side, but again, summary, details, all those things are the same, that look and feel. Line level notes, header level notes, attachments, all of those type of things are the same. Our expand and clap buttons look a little different, but same functionality on there. So if you're familiar with ReQlogic on the on-premise version of ReQlogic, or just ReQlogic,
we use it internally for expenses and time. So yeah, okay. We're all very familiar.
Yeah. So all that, basically all the same stuff on there. Now you'll see these. So you're familiar that we always had shortcuts, and this is kind of like a nice look and feel where, my on-prem version of ReQlogic, the icon was the icon, and it was kind of, some of these icons were just downright, didn't make any sense. Well, on this version, we allow you to pick the icons on there. And then and we have a link right to this font page, but now you can go here and pick whatever font you want. And now the only thing that you need to know is, and it's defaulted to free and solid. I mean, you can if they want to actually pay for icons, but we only accept solid icons on there. But they could go and search and pick whatever icons that they want to use for any of their shortcuts. So it's just kind of a nice user-friendly one to make these icons, unique to what they know that what they are on there. So that's a new interface for ReQlogic EX. Everything else on the user preferences the same. They can do their delegations. They can control the emails coming back and forth on that. So all the same type of things that are used to ReQlogic on-prem is now here, but we have the ability now to choose your what your icons look like. And then, like anything else, if you want to upload your profile picture, you can upload a profile picture like all the other Microsoft things that you could do. One thing, where was that? Display settings. This is totally new. So, and we do have customers. I'm sure you probably were asked that, or if you not had customers, they want to brand everything to be their color scheme and stuff like that. Well, we've made a very simple interface here. It might look complicated, but I mean, it is really simple, where change the logo very easily, so they want to put their logo on here, that's the logo, go into edit mode and go and pick what you want for your logo, and you can just set it in here. Now they want to change the color scheme. Everything that we have, they could change the color scheme on there. So they could go in and a lot of times they know their colors based on their numbers, right? They have their branding, they've worked with marketing, and here's their color scheme and here's your numbers. And so they could just type in the number itself, or they could go and choose however they want from the color palette and rebrand ReQlogic EX, so they don't even know that it's something other than it could be look like their total internal system that matches all their other web pages and branding that they've done. So that's a whole new interface that is just only available in ReQlogic EX. So that highlights the main differences in the ReQlogic EX versus ReQlogic. So do you have any other questions? I know we have time on there, but I just don't want to take time for the sake of taking time. But I'm happy to do a question and answer period if you guys have any questions that you have.
Chris,
Yeah, sorry, Chris, to interrupt you.
One
of the key things I forgot to mention, that's not part of
path from on-prem to DX, or is it just kind of set it up on DX and rebuild the workflows and whatever else there might be?
Yeah, so that's what I was just going to mention, is we do have migration tools that will help with those type of things. Now, one of the key things is on the routing policies, that kind of brings up the good point, is we could totally duplicate exactly what the routing policies are, because they're really the same. But there are some new features in the routing policies where you have compare values and stuff like that. You have different things. And then unlimited criteria. So in the old system, or in ReQlogic on-prem, you had 3 criteria per step, and sometimes you had to have 2 steps to meet all the criteria. Now we have unlimited criteria per step. So it defaults to 1, and you keep adding more and more and more and more on that. So, you're like your users, your departments, your policy steps, migration tools that will help bring that over, and that's part of this data maintenance, where you just drop and import things and create templates or whatever. But the key thing to know is if they want history. So say they were a Dynamics GP customer. Well, you can't migrate all the history and have it expect to be residing in the new ERP, but you could bring over all the history and it would be there and available for inquiry purposes. You can't copy and duplicate any of that because, again, totally different accounting system. But if they want to have visibility to all their history, we have part of our migration plan and tools that we have for people moving from on-prem like SL or GP to 365 BC. They could bring over all their history and have visibility to everything they've done in their old ReQlogic. It just is for visibility purposes only, no search and duplicating or things like that, just because there's no way to match table for table because they're totally entirely different ERP systems, but it's very handy if they want to look at what they've done in the past.
Sure.
So that has come up a lot, especially with the prospects or our current customers that are looking at moving to BC. Well, how can we get history? We need to see it. Well, yes, we have. It's already been developed and get ready to go and tested and stuff to bring over history. And I can't remember the work involved, but it's minimal. Like I can't. Leanne are one of our QA people and support people that are working on it going, within half an hour, she brought in like literally tens of thousands of records when she was testing that. So it's not like this, oh, I need a week of work to migrate all this over. We've made it very simple process.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah. So hopefully that could help. I mean, if those questions come up, Chris, I guess let them know they can bring over history and they can migrate, master records over like users, departments, routing policies, and those kind of things.
Okay, that's awesome.
So yeah, I'm glad to take some time with you guys. And any questions, send back off to me and I'll help explain anything that you have that you might need.
Great. Thanks a lot, Travis.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
No problem.
Thank you so
Thanks,
much. Have
guys.
a great day.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.
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 Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thank you.